Let me begin by saying that I'm very reluctant to file this report. I had an experience a year and a half ago which I didn't disclose until 6 days back when I filed my first report with MUFON. I spoke to an investigator on Monday, and then I had this terrifying experience on Tuesday. I haven't seen anything since my first sighting in 2009. Now, one day after talking to your investigator, I've been visited up close and personal. I'm not saying that one led to the other, but it is a very eerie coincidence. I was out on my deck Tuesday night, and I noticed a few flashing stars, not unlike what I had seen in my first report. It was 9 o'clock. These stars were then accompanied by these randomly flashing orbs that were descending to rooftop level. Then I saw a bright red flashing object low to the ground. It wasn't a plane, and it disappeared after a minute or two. After that, the real chaos began. Around 9:30, I noticed a huge streak of blue-white light flash across the sky, and after that, they were everywhere. Little flashes of what looked like laser beams, but they were coming from all directions, and not from one source in the sky. There was a bright, hovering orb directly in front of my house, and these little flashes of light were surrounding me. One came within 5 feet of me. They were constant. I was quite scared. I ran inside and called my brother to let him know what was happening when I heard a helicopter fly over my house. It was so low that I was almost shouting to make myself heard on the phone. I was on the phone for about 10 minutes, and in that time I counted 3 more helicopters and 2 planes fly directly over my house. They must have been very low for me to hear them from inside my home while on the telephone. After I hung up, I went back out onto the deck, and at this time there were planes and helicopters everywhere, but the bright orb in the sky was still above me, about a block or 2 away, and the height of the planes flying at it, but hovering, not flying. The flashes of light were still all around. Some were in the distance, some were high in the sky, some were on the street, and some were in the alley directly in front of me. I began to feel strange, not ill, but my stomach began to feel very odd. It was uncomfortable, almost an empty feeling, as if I hadn't eaten in days. At this time I was getting really worried, and the helicopters kept coming. The flashing beam phenomenon was practically happening on my deck, so I quickly came back inside out of fear. I called around and found that some of my neighbors were also aware of the heavy air traffic. One had actually heard all the commotion while in the shower and had gotten dressed and gone outside to see if there was an air raid or something. None had witnessed the lasers or orbs, but these were so low and directly in front of my house, so unless you were in my backyard, they would have been obstructed by other houses and trees. The 10 to 20 planes in the sky at any given time were visible to everyone, though. I'm sure that others had to have seen what I witnessed last night. I watched all of this go on for about an hour in total. I was home alone, so I was very disturbed, especially since the lights were coming so close to me. I came back inside and continued to hear planes and helicopters go by one after the other until about 11:30. Around that time, I went back outside and saw that the bright orb was moving away from my house, toward the farms and fields beyond. I watched it move slowly away, still flashing beams of light in the distance. The planes were still flying by. I went back out at 12:30 and the orb was gone. In its place, there were 2 sets of 3 lights in the shape of triangles, with planes flying at them. By this time, my mind was exhausted and I just couldn't comprehend anything else, so I came inside and tried to go to bed. Wednesday morning, I found out that my father had also seen strange orbs in the woods by the creek on his property earlier that night, around 8 o'clock. He said they looked like lanterns, but were sporadic and would disappear after a few seconds. I'm not sure that they are related, but he lives about 25 minutes from me, and it's very odd that we both saw similar phenomenon on the same night after almost 2 years of not seeing anything else substantial. I'm at a loss for words when it comes to describing just how unreal and amazing last night's events were. There must be someone else out there that witnessed the same thing. It left Northumberland, Pennsylvania, and headed toward Danville around 11:30 to 12. Anyone driving Route 11 at that time must have noticed an unusual number of low-flying planes, if not the orb and flashes themselves. First off, I'd like to make a statement. I honestly feel that intelligent non-human species reside on planet Earth. I've never seen these species, at least I don't think so, but I'm at a point where a theory has developed. We'll leave it there for now. In the summer of 2008, I started talking to David Eckhart, who's a proclaimed experiencer. He lived in a large home in a wooded area near Pensacola, Florida, that he described as his dream home. Beautiful wood interior with cathedral ceilings and lots of room for his family. David was a successful carpenter and contractor who wanted nothing more than to reap the rewards of years of hard work and enjoy life. But for some unknown reason, he and his family were chosen to witness a world within our own. In our first conversation, David repeated a story he had previously told other people, including NUFORC and MUFON investigators. I had heard similar scenarios in the past, but there was something different about David's saga, and it struck a chord with me. Over the past 2 years, I've been privy to videos, audio, screen caps, and other evidence that David has provided to me. His incredible story of countless abductions and home invasion by these beings has been presented on several radio interviews. As well, I've uploaded several videos and photographs to this blog and the wiki to gauge the reaction of the paranormal community. Overall, the reception has been somewhat disappointing, but to be honest, that was expected. So David put his faith in me and I did the same with him, and we waited. I'd decided not to post further details of David's encounters and evidence, to back off, to wait and see what happens. The wait is over. At one point, he states he was on a gurney or similar moving table that was in a room that contained a device that appeared to be used to transport humans, in particular, children. The reason why or to where these humans were being transported is not known, but a plausible theory can be made from some of David's other encounter descriptions. From the very beginning, it was made known to David that he was not in danger, but was given the opportunity to see what needed to be seen. The reason why was not told to him, but to the aliens, it seemed like it was important. This alien tour guide, or whatever you'd like to call it, was supposedly instructed to show him certain aspects of the alien habitation. Please note as well, David's family was also abducted, but kept separate from him during these tours. David described seeing vast underground caverns that he was told were under the Earth's surface. In these caverns, it became obvious what species was in charge: the reptilians. There were other beings as well, namely the lesser class, or Greys, which is not the name the aliens use, as well as other species. These caverns appeared to be some type of mining operation that uses manual labor. This includes human laborers. Now, I realize your inner alarms are going off at this point, but the descriptions given by an ordinary man put into an extraordinary situation are tangible. I will acquiesce that some of the revelations are similar to other experiences, such as Pamela Stonebrook, aka the intergalactic diva, who claimed to have had intimate relations with a reptilian. But unlike Stonebrook and others, David has provided more than just lip service and has never attempted to profit from this. Also, let's not mistake how the evidence was forwarded to me and then presented to you. I received everything from David over a year ago, and the gradual disclosure was of my doing. Because of this, I feel his account should be at least fairly evaluated. The guide was also a reptilian, and David basically describes this alien as a grouch who doesn't like humans. David's overall impression was that he was tolerated, but that he and all humans are considered a minor species by the reptilians. He was told that the alien presence was known by the world powers, and that this relationship had been going on for many years. Another interesting observation was that these beings believe in a higher being, or power, and are all connected by it. This religious connection has little to do with faith, but more as a law that must be revered by all. It is my contention that humans, as well as other species, are being used to advance the alien agenda. Furthermore, it seems that these alien beings are also transporting humans to other locations, either on this planet or elsewhere. I sincerely hope I'm 100% incorrect on this, but I think there may be some validity behind it. It's been almost 10 years since this happened, but I still can't really understand it, and honestly it makes me uncomfortable to recount this story. I was telling someone this story over the weekend, and they suggested I try to find if anyone else had had a similar experience, so here I am. I went camping in a pretty remote location in the foothills of Tennessee, USA. And the first night my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, arrived at the campsite. It was late at night and already dark. There were 4 to 5 other couples there already, and they'd set up our tent for us. This was my first time visiting the campsite. We sat around the campfire for 15 to 20 minutes talking with the host, and then went to bed because it was pretty late. But that night, something happened. I had an experience that I can best describe as a dream. In this experience, I woke up in the middle of a clearing in the woods with my wife. We were both drowsy and she was more or less incapacitated, as if she had been sedated. I was drowsy, but also in a full panic, a fear feeling as if we were being chased or trying to escape or something like that. I grabbed her under the arm and was sort of dragging her across this clearing towards a group of tents. The sky was sort of a foggy gray, so I had a little bit of visibility, and I could make out some very clear features about the area. A pond, a cleared area with trees all around, a basketball hoop attached to a tree, groups of tents, etc. I was able to drag her back to the tent and lay down. Well, that's when I actually woke up, terrified. Our tent didn't have a rain fly, so I could see out the top, into the trees and sky. I saw a circular object with 6 lights hovering just over the trees. The craft made no noise at all. I laid there completely paralyzed, and after a few moments, the craft just sort of flew off and out of sight. I laid in the tent completely terrified for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was thinking and feeling. Eventually, though, I was finally able to go back to sleep. The next morning when we woke up and I saw the campsite for the first time, it was exactly like I had seen in my experience, even down to the detail of the basketball hoop nailed to a tree. Again, I had some very strong and strange feelings after recognizing those surroundings from my dream. We didn't stay the next night, and I told my girlfriend the story on the drive home the next day. Fortunately, she didn't and doesn't think I'm crazy. I can still remember that event as vividly as if it had happened yesterday. As a child, I was terrified of aliens. Movies, television, any form of media depicting extraterrestrials, specifically greys, was extremely disturbing to me. Despite my fears, I cannot recall an outright abduction experience. I do, however, remember 3 odd occurrences in childhood that have stuck with me, even to this very day. The first occurrence happened when I was about 5 years old. It was the afternoon and I was napping in my parents' bedroom. My parents' bedroom was a fairly large room and was arranged in a way in which the bed was on the wall opposite of the door leading into the hallway. I recall waking up lying in the corner on my side against the wall near the door. My head was situated in an awkward angle against the wall. I remember awakening and feeling confused and frightened. I fumbled with the doorknob and went to be with my parents. I don't recall if I told them. The bed was too far away from the wall for me to have fallen out of bed. I could have been sleepwalking, but I don't have a history of this. But I suppose it is possible. It seems benign as I type, but I've always remembered this with unease. The second occurrence I remember occurred at roughly the same age. It was nighttime, and once again I was in my parents' bed. My grandpa had come from out of town to visit us and was with my parents in the living room. I remember wanting to stay up as I was excited that my grandpa was in town. I was restlessly lying in bed, unable to sleep, when I saw something that frightened me. My parents' room was attached to the master bathroom. As I was scared to sleep in the dark, my parents had left the bathroom light on for me. The bathroom door was closed, but there was enough of a gap between the floor and the door to provide enough of a nightlight. I saw what I perceived to be two shadows obscuring the light. I perceived these figures as being inside of the bathroom, pacing back and forth. I don't recall getting my parents, and I assume that I fell back asleep. The third childhood occurrence was in the form of a dream. My other grandparents live on a ranch. In my dream, I was outside with my grandfather, holding his hand. My grandfather was leading me to a large disc-like craft that was on the ground in the pasture in front of the ranch house. We entered the craft, and I recall sitting down on a bench in a dimly lit, humid room. I didn't see anyone or anything else, just my grandfather. During the dream, my grandfather never spoke or acknowledged me aside from leading me to the craft. I remember feeling bizarre and confused, sort of off, when I woke up. As an adult, I've had a recurring bizarre experience. This occurrence happens approximately every few months and actually happened last week. The occurrence is as follows. I wake up early in the morning and feel a presence. Mentally, I always think gray, but I've never seen them in this scenario. I feel frightened and sometimes hear a ringing or buzzing in my ear that resonates into my jaw. As soon as it begins, it's over, and I feel an intense itching on my forearms and shins. Usually I fall asleep after this and wake up in the morning without further incidents. However, last time as I was itching, I distinctly heard a door in the house creak, as if someone had moved it. Oddly, my wife recalls hearing the noise as well. I don't know if I'm dreaming or I'm misremembering. I hold a professional job and have a loving family. I have a great life, but have always felt something else was going on with me. Almost like I'm supposed to know something that I just can't connect the dots. I was actually considering hypnosis, but admittedly, I need to research this more.